Armand Gamache sat in the little room and closed the dossier with care, squeezing it shut, trapping the words inside. It was a thin file, just a few pages, like all the rest surrounding him on the old wooden floor of his study, and yet not like all the rest. He looked at the slender lives lying at his feet, waiting for his decision on their fate. He'd been at this for a while now, reviewing the dossiers, taking notes of the tiny dots on the upper right corner of the tabs, red for rejected, green for accepted. He had not put those dots there. His predecessor had. Armand placed the file on the floor and leaned forward in his comfortable armchair, his elbows on his knees, his large hands together, fingers intertwined. He felt like a passenger on a transcontinental flight, staring down at fields below him, some fertile, some fallow and ripe with potential, and some barren, the topsoil masking the rock beneath. But which was which? He'd read and considered and tried to drill down past the scant information. He wondered about these lives, and he wondered about the decisions of his predecessor. For years, decades as head of homicide for the Surete du Quebec, his job had been to dig, to collect evidence, to review facts and question feelings, to pursue and arrest, to use his judgment, but never to judge. But now he was judge and jury, the first and final word. And Armand Gamache realized, without great surprise, that it was a role he was comfortable with, even liked. The power, yes, he was honest enough to admit that, but mostly he appreciated that he was now in a position not simply to react to the present, but to actually shape the future. And at his feet was the future. Gamache leaned back and crossed his legs. It was past midnight, but he wasn't tired. A cup of tea sat on his desk beside a couple of chocolate chip cookies, uneaten. The curtains of his study fluttered, and he could feel a cold draught coming in through the slightly open window. And he knew if he drew back the curtains and turned on the porch light, he would see the first snow of the season swirling in the light, falling softly and landing on the roofs of the homes in this tiny village of 3 pines. It would cover the perennial gardens and leave a thin layer on cars and porches, on the bench in the middle of the village green. It would be landing softly on the forests and mountains and the rivière Bella Bella that flowed past the homes. It was the beginning of November, and this was an early snow even by Quebec standards. A tease, a portent. And not enough, yet, for children to play in. But soon, he knew. It would come soon enough, and the grey November would be transformed into a bright, sparkling wonderland of skiing and skating, of snowball fights and snow forts and snowmen, and angels made in snow that had fallen from the heavens. But for now the children slept, and their parents slept. Everyone in the small Quebec village slept, while the snow fell and Armand Gamache considered the young lives that lay at his feet. Through the open door of his study, he saw the living room of the home he shared with his wife, Reine-Marie. Oriental rugs were scattered about the wide plank flooring. A large sofa sat on one side of the large stone hearth, and 2 faded armchairs on the other. Side tables were piled with magazines and books. Bookcases lined the walls, and lamps filled the room with pleasant light. It was an inviting room, and now Gamache stood up, stretched, and walked out into it, their shepherd Henri following him. He poked the fire and sat in one of the armchairs. His work wasn't done yet. Now he needed to think. He'd made up his mind about most of the files, except that one. When he'd first seen it, he'd read the contents, then set it aside, in the rejected pile, agreeing with the red dot of his predecessor. But something had niggled at him, and he kept returning to that one file, reading and rereading it, trying to work out why this one dossier, this one young woman out of all of them, was troubling at him. Gamache had brought the file with him, and now he opened it, again. Her face stared at him, arrogant, challenging, pale. Her hair jet black, shaved in places, spiked in others. There were unmistakable piercings through her nose and brows and cheek. She claimed to read ancient Greek and Latin, and yet she'd barely scraped by high school,